Now that the death bear is dead, Aina praises it to learn its abilities, and after the splitting headache is over, Ursula tells him he should now possess enough strength to make it out of this dungeon on his own. But before he leaves, Ursula has a present to give him, but she's only doing this because Yuri asked her to. She says she's going to make a new sprite eye for Ain using the rest of the Yggdrasil tree's core. Ain doesn't think he deserves such a valuable gift, but Ursula yells at him, saying he is only going to be borrowing the core. She enchanted it, so if Ain ever dies, then the core will automatically return here, so he should just shut up and accept the gift already. Ain doesn't want to argue about it, so he gets down so Ursula can implant the spirit core in his eye, but after she's done, he doesn't feel that much different from before. Ursula tells him it will take time for his body to adapt to his new spirit god eye, so he can't use its abilities right away. But even so, Ain is really grateful, so he turns to Yuri to thank her for the gift, but he can't find her anywhere. Just then, Yuri reappears in front of him, so Aina asks where she was, and she tells him she was in his eye a moment ago. With the World Tree core in Ain's eye, he now basically qualifies as the World Tree itself, so Yuri can freely enter and leave his eye whenever she wants. Yuri promises that she will be helpful to Ain since she can heal him whenever he gets injured. And Ain definitely likes the idea of getting to spend time with Yuri, but he asks Ursula if she's really okay with this. Ursula drop-kicks him in the face and says she obviously doesn't want to entrust Yuri to a schmuck like him. But Yuri has been stuck here ever since the day she was born, so she has never gotten to see the world or had a friend. Ursula may not like him, but after all the time she has spent with him, she can at least tell that he's a good kid, so she wants him to go out there and show Yuri the world. Ain is honored that Ursula trusts him so much, so he swears to take care of Yuri no matter what, and Ursula is glad to hear that. Before Ain leaves, Ursula has a gift of her own that she wants to give him, so she asks him to stretch out his hand, and as he does so, she imbues it with some magic. Ain asks what this is, so she explains that it's an infinite storage spell, so as long as he has that mark, he can store any physical objects within it. And the first thing she wants him to store is this spirit sword she made for him, but before that, she stabs him in the eye. Ain falls to the floor in pain, so Yuri heals him, but just before his eye is completely healed, Ursula shoves a philosopher's stone down his throat and it replaces his right eye. Ain asks what that was all about, so Ursula explains that the Philosopher's Stone just established a permanent link between her and Ain, so now she can see everything he sees, so he had better not think about getting physical with Yuri. This is definitely going to be awkward for Ain, but that aside, he's all set, so it's about time he starts making his way out of the dungeon. Before they get going, Ain asks Yuri if there's anything she wants to do once they get to the surface, and after thinking about it for a bit, Yuri answers, saying she would like to see the rest of her family. Ain didn't know that Yuri had any family aside from Ursula, so Ursula explains that all the world trees that exist used to be part of one massive world tree. However, at one point, the cores were split and hidden away in separate dungeons, so Yuri hasn't been able to see her siblings in years. In that case, Ain promises to travel the world with her so they can meet all the other world tree spirits. But to do that, first, they have to get out of here. Ain heads out into the dungeon, but once he comes across a split in the path, he isn't sure which direction he should follow. All of a sudden, he hears Ursula's voice in his head, and she's telling him to take the path to the left. She already appraised an escape route for him with his eye, so as long as he follows her directions, he can't get lost. Also, there's a giant viper monster heading straight for him, so he had better get ready to fight it off. A few minutes later, Ain has killed the S-rank viper, and he's pretty proud of himself for being able to take it down so easily. Ursula tells Ain that she already used his eye to appraise the viper's abilities, but Ain wasn't ready for it, so he grabs his head in anticipation of the intense pain. However, to his surprise, there is no pain, and that's thanks to Yuri because she healed him as soon as his head was about to start hurting. If Yuri can do that, then that means he won't have to suffer any more headaches when he appraises skills to learn them, so he thanks her for all her help. Ain eventually makes it to an ominous-looking door, and Ursula explains that this is where he will find the boss monster of this floor. Dungeons are pretty much living creatures that feed on the human that die, and as such, there is always a dungeon core and a dungeon boss to guard that core. The only way for Ain to get out of here is to defeat the dungeon boss and destroy the core, but Ain isn't sure if he has what it takes to do it. Defeating S-rank monsters is one thing, but a dungeon boss is supposedly several times stronger than any S-rank monster he has encountered so far. However, he refuses to back down because he is no longer the weak Ain who would helplessly run from death. He opens the doors to the boss room and finds the dungeon core on the other side of the room, but as he and Yuri are walking over to it, they trigger a summoning circle on the ground and cause a massive golem to spawn. This fight is going to be tough, so Ain asks Yuri to get back in his eye so she doesn't get hurt, after which he begins charging at the golem. He dodges the golem's first strike with his speed boost, but he won't be able to dodge the second one. So instead, he braces himself for impact with his superhuman strength skill. While he is touching the golem, he also activates the venom skill he got from the viper to dissolve a chunk of the golem's arm. The venom managed to do a lot of damage to the golem, but it wasn't enough to finish it off, so Ursula says she's giving special permission to use the ultimate spell she taught him. He should have just enough mana to pull it off now, and even if he collapses, Yuri can just heal him right away, so it shouldn't be a problem. Since nothing else has worked so far, Ein decided to use his ultimate spell after all and cast Nova Strike to hit the golem with a massive ball of pure energy. After hitting the golem with that spell, practically nothing is left of it, and surprisingly, Ein didn't even collapse from mana exhaustion. Yuri comes out to replenish Ein's lost mana, and congratulates him for defeating the golem, but Ein knows he never could have done this without Yuri's help, so he thanks her. Yuri is really giddy about it, but Ursula is annoyed by how much Yuri likes him, so she tells Ein to hurry up and praise the golem's abilities already. Ein does so, and once he's done with that, Ursula tells him that there's one more thing he needs to appraise, so she asks him to go over to the dungeon core. Ein does as instructed, and while he's appraising the core, Ursula appears next to him, which comes as a major surprise since Ein thought she could leave the world tree. Ursula confirms that she is still bound to the world tree, but since the entire world tree's core is in Ein's eye, his body is practically the world tree now, so she can teleport within a certain vicinity of him. That aside, this dungeon core operates similarly to a spirit core, so Ursula says she can use it to level up Ein's spirit god eye if he wants. Ein readily agrees to the proposal, so Ursula takes the dungeon core and puts it in Ein's eye to level him up to level 2. She then tells Ein that he can level his eye up more by conquering different dungeons and absorbing their cores. The three of them then leave the boss room and the door closes behind them, so they can no longer return. Ursula assumes this must be because they defeated the boss and took the core, so the dungeon is sealing itself off so it can recover. The hole that Ein fell through is also probably sealed now, and that's a good thing since it means there is no way for any more humans to stumble up on the world tree. So Ursula doesn't need to worry about protecting Yuri's tree body anymore. And the three of them are free to go on as many adventures as they want. Back in town, Zoid is still telling all the adventurers around about the tragedy that happened in the dungeon and how he nearly got eaten by hellhounds. And the only reason he actually managed to escape was because Ein selflessly volunteered to distract the hellhounds for him. This is a shameless lie, but since Zoid thinks Ein is dead, he is confident that no one will ever find out because it's not like Ein is going to come back and expose him. A second later, Ein shows up behind Zoid and he overheard Zoid's entire story, so he's here to expose him. He tells everyone that Zoid and Jolene paralyzed him and left him to die to the hounds. The people at the bar are enraged because they've been giving Zoid sympathy all this time, but he practically tried to murder Ein for his own sake. They start throwing things at Zoid, and they might have even lynched him for doing something so sinister to his own party member, but Ein stops them. He's still kind of mad at Zoid for what he did, but if not for that, he would have never gotten the chance to meet Yuri or Ursula, so he's actually grateful that Zoid was such a scumbag. Now that he has confronted Zoid, Ein can finally move on, so he and the others head to a swamp dungeon near the capital. After clearing it, Ursula uses the dungeon core to level Ein's eye up, and with the upgrade, Ein is now able to read all types of writing. He's glad he leveled his eye up, but he's a little disappointed since he was hoping to find a world tree there. Ursula tells him it isn't going to be easy to find the world trees since a lot of effort was put into hiding them. Ein apologizes to Yuri since it might take a little longer than he anticipated before she gets to see her family, but Yuri says she doesn't mind since she's having fun. Just then, they hear the sound of a girl screaming and Yuri wants to help, so Ein runs out to save the girl. The girl's carriage had been attacked by monsters, so Ein slays them, and once all the monsters are dead, Yuri begins healing all the injured guards. Ein goes over to the girl and asks her if she's alright, but the second the girl saw Ein's face, the only words going through her head are, "Oh my god, that guy's hot." She jumps into Ein's arms, calling him her hero, and Ein doesn't know how to handle this situation, so he asks the guy over there for help. But Jasper is just the head of a trading company, so he has no control over what Princess Claudia does. A little while later, the princess brings Ein and the others to her mansion to properly thank them for saving her. And even though she's the third princess of this nation, she tells them there's no need to be so formal with her. And with that said, she jumps up to give Ein another big hug. However, before she could wrap her arms around him, Yuri steps in front of Claudia and refuses to let her get close to Ein. Claudia asks why Yuri is being so defensive, so Yuri blurts out that she doesn't want Claudia to touch Ein because she's Ein's wife. We then cut to Ein's face, and that right there is the face of a man who didn't realize he was married until a second ago. However, even with Yuri's declaration, Claudia doesn't give up because she's fine with becoming Ein's second wife. While she and Yuri argue over Ein, Jasper comes over and says he has something to tell him. Ein asks what this is about, so Jasper tells him he wants to marry Ein. That's the third person today, but before Ein can respond, Jasper asks him to come down to the basement because there's something he wants to show him. Jasper is the head of the Juno Trading Company, and Ein already knows about the company since they are pretty much the richest and most famous trading company out there. Jasper leads everyone to his jewel room and explains that he has made it his life's mission to preserve all the prettiest jewels in the world, and today he found the prettiest jewel of all. He knows Ein's eye is made of a spirit core since he has done quite a bit of research on them, and he fell in love with Ein's eyes at first sight. He asks Ein to marry him so he can look into his eyes for the rest of his life, and Ein was initially going to decline, but Ursula pulls him aside and tells Ein to reconsider because Jasper probably has information on the location of other spirit cores. Plus, Jasper is rich, so if Ein married him, he would have access to all his resources. However, Ein isn't interested in being the gold digger, so he asks Jasper if they can just be friends instead, and Jasper says that's fine for now at least. Ein then asks Jasper if he has any information on the other spirit cores, and Jasper confirms this, but the locations are incredibly dangerous, so he hasn't been able to investigate.